Chapter 8 Dead Man's Howl, Part 1. At last reindeer came down to Howstead, and with the autumn turning towards winter and fetching the grey skies out to hide the sun, a more desolate place was not to be seen anywhere in the north. Skallagrim said, "I do not like the look of this steading friend Starcad. It has all the looks of a place where a man might find his doom waiting. I counsel you, I who have given you rings and war gear in the past as a lord should, not to go there. Look, I will give you a sword from my store. I have 4 of them stowed under decks, and you shall take your pick. How is that?" Starcad gave a wrench at the steerboard shaft and said, "Jarl, I follow you in all things, but in this matter of getting a new sword, I must be governed by my heart, and heart says that my sword rests up there, beyond the steading. I have spoken. There is no more to say." Bjorn and the others stared towards the land, where, on the high grey cliff edge, the tumble-down huts clustered like rugged clams on a rock. To Bjorn, the huts looked more like wild beasts crouching than dwelling places. It was late afternoon, and brown smoke rose above the place, eddying in the light air like a dirty blanket. Up there they were weed burners, he thought. He had seen smoke like that in Iceland, and knew that the men of Howstead must be busy at other trades than gathering wood if they burned shoreweed. He wondered what their business was. Skallagrim turned to Gork and said, "Shipmate, what is your opinion? You are a man of good sense. Can you not persuade Starcad to get his sword another way?" Gork scratched the end of his pointed red nose and said, "Jarl, my advice is not worth a horse's cast shoe, for my sense comes and goes like any other man's, so do not ask me that. All I can tell you is that I was sworn in as Starcad's guardian, and so, whatever he chooses to do, I am bound to follow at his back." Skallagrim said, "I bound you by that oath, and I can release you from it. Now say what is in your mind without fear or favour." Gork said, "Then look you, Master Jarl, if I had sworn to follow you to the world's edge, where the mermaids play and the seahorses snort on the waters, you would expect me to go with you, would you not?" Skallagrim nodded. "That is the law," he said. "Very well," said Gork. "Now if a man came and offered to take my oath from me, would you not feel betrayed?" The Jarl turned away and said, "Very well, what must be, must. But look at the rock which lies off their shore and see if you call it a good sign." They looked. It was the tallest column of rock Bjorn had ever seen, and reached upward like the end of a blunt sword into the grey sky, olive green and dusty brown, with sheer sides, and here and there narrow ledges covered with dry heather. On one ledge, a little wider than the rest, halfway down the pillar, a heap of bones lay silent and white. Bjorn said to Gork, "How did they get up there, friend?" Gork made little of it. He said, "Maybe the homestead folk sacrifice to this rock and lay the offerings there, or maybe these are the bones of silly goats that once climbed up and could never get down again." Jarl Skallagrim came between them both and said, "Well, you may ask, lad. Aye, well, you may ask. Now look again, and see the cormorants, the black-backed gulls, and at the highest tip even the hawks sitting still waiting on that rock. And look, on the landward side there is a family of seals rolling in the lee, not foraging as they mostly do. That is a bad sign, for seals are stupid folk and will go anywhere to pick up scraps. But these seals know better than to go inshore, and it is my counsel that where seals will not go, Vikings should not." Starcad smiled and said, "Master, I have sailed with you since I was a boy with no hair on my face. Have you ever known me go against your wishes before?" The Jarl said, "Have it as you will, but one thing, Starcad, I have a whole ship's company in my care, whose widows must be paid blood money if they are lost. Reindeer is no small prize either, and would buy me a palace in Novgorod, so I am forced to tell you this." I cannot risk ship or men on this venture for a mere sword. I will set you ashore tonight and will wait for you a reasonable space. Then when the time is up, I will sound 3 long blasts on the horn, and that will mean we must be away. If you do not come after a count of 300, said slowly, then I must put off to sea again. Now are you set on going?" Starcad smiled and nodded. "Jarl," he said, "when have you known me turn my hand away from work I have begun?" Jarl Skallagrim grunted angrily and said, "Truly are you called a bearsark. Where there is no sense, there is no reason. But never forget, my friend, that I asked you not to go." Bjorn felt sorry for the Jarl, for he could see that the man loved Starcad, but then the boy's heart almost stopped, for Starcad said, "I shall not forget, master. I shall not need to, for I shall come back with the sword, never fear. And so that my luck holds, let me take the boy with me. He put the notion into my head, so it must be in the heart of Odin that he should come and help me get the sword." Jarl Skallagrim was so angry then that he clenched his fist as though he meant to hit someone. "What do you say to that, Bjorn?" he asked when he could speak. Bjorn was like a man between 2 horses, being pulled 2 ways at once. He truly believed what the Jarl had said about this place, but in his hand he still held that lovely iron stag that Starcad had given him, and it ill became a man to desert a comrade. Bjorn said at last, "I will go with Starcad, Jarl." Starcad did not seem to hear him, but Gork patted him on the shoulder and whispered, "Well said, warrior. A man can die only once, after all." So, that night when the moon was behind a cloud, the 3 of them were put ashore and waded waist-deep through the shallows towards Halstead Cliffs. The burial mounds were not hard to find, even in the dim moonlight, for they stood like 3 domes, each higher than a king's house above the village on the landward side. Starcad stopped by the tallest of them. "This," he said, "is where the best swords should be, friends."